Okay, let's start with a scenario that I think everyone, regardless of where they live, has agonized over at some point.
Oh, I know this one.
You're moving, maybe it's a new city, maybe it's a new chapter in your life, and you have these two, very loud, very conflicting voices in your head.
I can already hear them.
Right.
One is the voice of caution, and the other is the voice of, well, it's usually your parents.
Exactly. One voice says, rent for a bit, test the waters, see if you like the coffee shop, or if the neighbors, play drums at 3 a.m.
And the other voice.
The other one, the financial prudence voice, is just screaming, renting is throwing money into a fire. Buy immediately. Build that equity. If you aren't owning, you're losing.
It is the classic real estate dilemma, the old rent versus buy calculation. And in most developed markets, we have a literal formula for this.
Right.
You look at the price-to-rent ratio, you check the interest rates, you plug it into a spreadsheet, and the math tells you what to do.
Yeah, it's a logic problem. But today, we're taking that standard Western playbook, crumbling it up, and tossing it out the window.
We are.
Because today, we are looking at the housing market in Jamaica.
And this is where it gets absolutely fascinating. Because if you try to apply that standard advice, specifically that move fast and buy immediately pressure to the Jamaican market, you are not just risking a bad investment.
You're doing what?
You might be walking into a logistical and financial minefield.
So for this, we're basing today's deep dive on a really comprehensive article from Jamaica Homes. It's a company founded by Dean Jones.
And the piece is called Before the Keys, Before the Deed: How Jamaicans Really Find Their Way Home.
And honestly, reading this, I realized that in Jamaica, moving isn't just a transaction. It's not just swapping one roof for another.
It really isn't. And the mission for us today is to unpack why that is. We need to look at how culture, bureaucracy, and this incredibly heavy concept of legacy completely reshape the economics of moving.
Yep.
As Dean Jones puts it, and I think this frames our whole conversation ownership in Jamaica, is a journey, not a checkout line.
A journey, not a checkout line. That is such a huge shift from how we talk about real estate, which is all about closing the deal.
Right.
So let's start with that emotional weight. In a big economy, say New York or London, I move because I got a job transfer or I want a better school district. It's functional. Is it different in Jamaica?
Fundamentally different. You have to remember, we aren't just talking about people moving across town, though. That happens.
Okay.
We are talking about a market that's heavily influenced by the diaspora, people returning to the island after decades away. So the source material really emphasizes that moving is rarely just about proximity to work.
So you're not just moving to shave like 10 minutes off a commute.
No. It's described as emotional and layered. The article lists these specific motivations that drive the market. It's often about returning home in a very real, spiritual sense. It's about consolidating family assets. Or, and I love this phrase, it's about finally acting on a long-held intention.
A long-held intention. That sounds like something you've been planning for 20 years.
Often it is. It's about stepping forward into a legacy. You aren't just buying a unit to flip it. You are establishing a foothold on family soil.
And because of that, the whole rhythm of the market is different.
Entirely. In the US or UK, the real estate market punishes you for being slow. You snooze, you lose.
Right. If you don't put an offer in by noon, the house is gone.
Exactly. But the source makes a key distinction here. The Jamaican market does not reward impatience. In fact, it often punishes it. But, and this is the key, it does not punish intention.
That is a really poetic way to put it. So if the rhythm is slower and the stakes are more emotional, where does renting fit in? Because I think a lot of us have this bias that renting is just temporary.
It's a stepping stone.
Yeah, it's what you do before you're successful enough to buy.
And that is exactly the assumption we have to break. In this context, renting is often reframed as a strategic pause.
A strategic pause. Okay, unpack that for me. Is that just a nice way of saying I'm waiting for the bank to say yes?
Sometimes, but it's often much more proactive than that. Imagine you have the money. You are ready to buy. But in Jamaica, you might still rent.
But why?
Not because you want to, but because of the bureaucratic reality. The article details these specific hurdles that simply take time.
Like what?
Titles are the big one. The concept of a clean title is absolutely crucial. You might be waiting on approvals, surveys, valuations.
Okay.
And financing in Jamaica, to quote the source, does not move at the pace of desire.
Does not move at the pace of desire. I feel like I need that on a t-shirt for so many things in life.
It's very apt. You might have the will, but the system has its own timeline.
Right.
Dean Jones has this great insight here. He says, in Jamaica, people don't rent because they don't want to own. They rent because ownership here is a journey. So you're renting to stay in the game while the game, sets up the board.
And there was one specific detail in the source about the non-existent house that I found really striking.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like a mystery novel title.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's a very practical reality. There's a quiet truth in the Jamaican market that many renters are actually builders in waiting.
You mean they're building their own place?
Exactly. In many Western markets, you buy a finished product. In Jamaica, there is a massive culture of buying land and building.
But you can't live on a construction site.
You can't live in a foundation trench. So people rent a place nearby to live while they oversee the construction of their dream home.
That is a huge shift in perspective. If I drive past a rental complex, I might think, oh, these folks aren't homeowners yet.
Right.
But in reality, they might be building a literal mansion 3 streets over.
Precisely. They are project managers disguised as tenants. So if you judge a renter in Jamaica as someone who isn't ready to buy, you might be completely misreading the situation.
Because the house they want literally does not exist yet.
They're creating it.
I want to zoom in on a specific group of people the article mentions because I think they drive a lot of this dynamic. The returning residents.
A diaspora. Yeah, this is a critical demographic.
These are Jamaicans who've lived abroad, UK, US, Canada, often for decades, coming back to retire or start a new chapter.
Right. And usually these are folks who have accumulated some capital.
Yeah. They've been working overseas for 30 years. They come back with cash. My assumption, using my Western brain, would be, boom, cash buyer, buy a house immediately, no mortgage needed, so no delay.
And the source says, not so fast.
No.
No, and that's a dangerous assumption. The article explicitly discusses this conflict. They arrive with capital, yes, but they often still choose to rent.
Why? I mean, if I have a suitcase full of cash, why am I paying a landlord?
Because cash doesn't solve structural opacity. The source calls renting breathing room. Even with money, you have to navigate the local banking system, which can be tricky for someone who's been out of the country since, the 90s.
And I'm guessing the paperwork.
Always the paperwork. We're back to titles. Verifying a title is crucial. You do not want to hand over a retirement nest egg for a property where the ownership is murky.
Or where a long-lost cousin suddenly appears with a claim to the land.
That sounds like a nightmare scenario, and it happens. Buying a house and then realizing the person who sold it to you didn't actually have the full right to sell it.
Wow.
It happens. And renting gives you the time to do that due diligence without pressure. But there's also the aspect of relearning the market.
Relearning? But they're Jamaican. They know the place.
They know the Jamaica they left 20 or 30 years ago.
Ah.
But markets evolve, neighborhoods change. The source points out that even born and bred Jamaicans returning home need to realize the market has moved on without them.
So the quiet residential street they remember from childhood might be, what, a commercial zone now?
Or vice versa. If you rush in based on your nostalgia map, you might make a very expensive mistake.
And renting acts as a buffer against those missteps.
It updates your internal GPS to the current reality.
That makes so much sense. It's checking your nostalgia against the facts on the ground.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the who, the returning residents, the builders. Let's talk about the where. Because when we talk about the housing market, we tend to act like it's one big monolith.
It never is.
But I'm guessing buying a place in Kingston is different from buying a place on the coast.
Completely different. The source makes it very clear. The market is not uniform. You cannot apply the same logic everywhere.
Give me some examples of how that plays out.
Well, the dynamics in Kingston, the capital, the business hub, are not the dynamics in Montego Bay, which is tourism-heavy and coastal. St. Catherine does not behave like Manchester.
And the rural parishes.
That is an entirely different set of expectations and timelines.
So how does that affect the rent versus buy decision?
It comes down to what we might call local intelligence. The article distinguishes between local moves and long moves.
Okay, break that down for me.
If you're moving locally, say within the same parish or just a few towns over, you know the score. You know the floodplains, you know the traffic patterns, you know the social dynamics of that specific street.
You know which neighbor has the roosters that crow at dawn.
Exactly. You have that granular data, that trust, that knowledge. It shortens the timeline. People in that situation tend to buy sooner because they know exactly what they're getting into.
They don't need to test the neighborhood.
Right. But if you're moving from London to Manchester, Jamaica,
Yeah.
or even just from Kingston to a rural area,
That's a long move.
that's a long move. You lack that local data.
Hmm.
That introduces risk. And this is where Dean Jones drops another golden quote.
Go on.
A rush purchase can cost you far more than a year of rent.
Wow. That really reframes the cost, doesn't it?
It does. He says, in Jamaica, the smartest buyers aren't slow, they're deliberate.
I like that distinction. Deliberate, not slow. It's active waiting.
Yes, it's gathering intelligence.
But let's play devil's advocate here. We've talked a lot about why people choose to wait, the strategic pauses, the builders.
Sure.
But surely there are people who want to buy but just can't. It's not all strategy, is it?
No, absolutely not. And the source is very honest about this. We have to talk about the hurdles to ownership. We established that land is seen as security. A house is proof of arrival.
It's a huge cultural aspiration.
Huge. But the barriers are real, and they are high.
So what are the big blockers that are mentioned?
Financial blockers.
Yep.
Uneven mortgage access is a big one. High interest rates compared to what you might see in the U.S. or Europe. And deposit requirements can be steep.
Okay.
But there's a specific hurdle for a large chunk of the population. Documentation.
You mean proving you have the money?
Proving you have the income in a way that a bank accepts. Think about self-employed individuals or people working in the gig economy.
Ah, right. If you don't have a standard pay stub from a big company, the bank gets nervous.
Exactly. Even if you have the cash flow, if you can't prove it with the specific paperwork traditional banks demand, you're stuck. The article introduces this concept of holding strain.
Holding strain. That sounds heavy.
It is. It describes renting not as a glamorous lifestyle choice or even a strategic pause, but as a necessity while you get your financial footing.
So you're renting because you are fighting to get that mortgage approval or fighting to save that massive deposit.
You're not testing the water.
You're treading water.
Treading water until you can climb onto the boat. It acknowledges the grit required to enter the Jamaican market. It's not easy for everyone.
That's a really important distinction because I think sometimes real estate advice can be a bit elitist, assuming everyone has the option to just buy now if they wanted to.
It can be. And this holding strain concept keeps us grounded in the reality of the economy.
I want to pivot to a term I saw in the notes that really caught my eye. Redefining affordability. Because usually when I think affordability, I think, here's the listing price, here's my budget, do they match? Simple math.
And in Jamaica, that simple math is a dangerous oversimplification. Affordability means so much more than the sticker price on the listing.
What else is hiding in there?
The hidden costs of daily life and infrastructure. The article lists things like access to utilities and transportation, but the really critical one, the one that catches people off guard, is resilience.
Resilience, like how strong the house is.
Environmental resilience. We are talking about an island in the tropics. You have to consider drainage. You have to consider construction quality against hurricanes. You have to ask, is this road going to wash away in a heavy rain?
Oh, wow. So a house might be cheap, but if the road to get to it becomes a river 3 times a year...
Then it's not actually affordable, is it?
Yeah.
You pay for that cheap price with expensive repairs or impossible commutes.
Right.
If the power grid in that specific community is unstable, you're buying a generator and fuel constantly. That's a hidden cost.
So this brings us right back to renting as a strategy.
It does. The source calls renting reconnaissance.
Reconnaissance, like a military scouting mission.
In a way, yes. It allows you to test those environmental realities before you commit your life savings. You rent through a rainy season to see if the roof leaks or the yard floods.
Okay.
You rent to test the commute to Kingston during rush hour, not just on a Sunday afternoon when the roads are clear.
That is so smart. Rent as reconnaissance. It's basically dating the neighborhood before you marry the mortgage.
Precisely. It allows you to understand the community planning, or lack thereof, and the long-term value. It prevents buyer's remorse in a market where selling and moving again isn't always quick or easy.
You are stress testing the asset before you own it.
Exactly.
So if we zoom out, we started this by saying the rent versus buy debate is usually binary. You're either a smart owner or a wasteful renter. But this deep dive into Jamaica has really shown that it's a spectrum.
It is about alignment. That is the core message Dean Jones is driving at. It's not about a binary choice. It is about aligning your resources, your readiness, and the reality of the market.
And realizing that readiness involves paperwork, culture, and geography, not just a bank balance.
Correct. Dean Jones summarizes this philosophy perfectly in the source. He says, the job isn't to push people to buy or rent. The job is to help them make the move that still feels right 5 years from now.
That's the metric, not did I save money this month, but will I be happy with this decision in 5 years?
And often, paying for patience, paying that rent for a year or two, is the price of ensuring that 5-year happiness. It's an investment in certainty.
It's funny, we often think of renting as dead money, but in this context, it sounds more like an insurance policy against a really bad decision.
I would agree with that. Whether you're a returning resident needing to verify titles, a local buyer saving for a deposit, or someone building their dream home from scratch, the path is rarely a straight line.
So, for everyone listening, whether you're looking at property in Jamaica or just reevaluating your own housing situation wherever you are, here is a final thought to chew on.
Go on.
We are conditioned to speed. We want the keys now. We want the deed now. But in a complex world or a complex island, could it be that the most valuable thing you can buy isn't the house itself, but the time to find the right one? Could paying for patience actually be the best investment you can make?
That is a question worth asking. Sometimes the slow road is the only one that gets you home.
Thanks for diving in with us today.
Good pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious.